Fam, welcome back. It's your boy CJ for CT, and today we're bringing you one of our most exciting breakdowns yet. Ranking freshman classes? Check. Top 10 albums? Been there, done that. This time we'll be looking at the 10 best mixtapes from XXL selections. Since the arrival of the streaming era, the mixtape has all but died out. During a publication's peak, however, you needed a classic mixtape just to be considered for a spot. Think of it like a cover charge. Same rules and limits apply from the album ranking, 1 entry per artist. Definitely get active in the comments, just don't be the 5th person to say, how could you miss insert artist here? There's 10 slots, dozens of classics to choose from. Like, subscribe, and share the content. Doesn't have to be in that order, but it does need to be done. Let's get into it. Number 10, Lil Uzi Vert, Lil Uzi versus the World. If you tapped in with our class ranking video, you the real MVP. We hope you caught the part where we drew the line between millennials and Gen Z. Well, this mixtape serves a similar purpose. Except this time we see a clear distinction between pre and post streaming services, but we'll save that discussion for a different video. Okay, so what do you need to know about Uzi's selection for this list? For starters, Lil Uzi versus the World could throw its name in the discussion of most impactful and influential mixtapes on this list. T.I., Jeezy, and Gucci get their flowers for the formation of trap, as they should. Dre and NWA are revered as the forefathers of gangsta rap, no complaints from us. We know the label has become a pejorative by this point, but nobody did more to get SoundCloud rap off the ground than Uzi. Production from Molly Raw, Don Cannon, and Metro would set the standard for the zany and unorthodox rap scene that would follow. Aside from the sound and concise structure of his projects, Uzi's impact on style and fashion has been undeniable. Shout out to Ferris out of St. Louis, he went crazy on that album cover, by the way. Uzi versus the World might have only peaked at number 37 on Billboard 200, but it might as well have gone double diamond on that piff. On a side note, we know the website wasn't really feasible anymore, but who do we need to get in touch with to track these streaming numbers down? Those stats gotta count for something, right? Number 9, Wale, More About Nothing. Here at Culturalist Theory, although we're expanding, we've mainly covered 2 things, hip-hop and R&B. Perhaps no artist better fits the intersection of the two than Ralph Lauren, aka Mr. Seasonal crossover hit. While the vast majority of fans have only scratched the surface of his extensive catalog, you know we had to do our homework before rolling this one out. Claiming to have seen every episode of Seinfeld, Wale would roll out a string of related works, including the mixtape About Nothing, More About Nothing, and the album About Nothing. We're not going to give too much away, but let's just say 2 of these projects were solid enough to land Wale in a different ranking video altogether. The mixtape About Nothing sees Wale at his hungriest. It precedes his debut album Attention Deficit and essentially served as a catapult that got him traction outside the DMV. With that being said, its mixing hasn't aged well, and you can hear the limitations that an unsigned artist on the come up in the late 2000s would have struggled with. More About Nothing graces our ranking because while Folarin manages to carry over a lot of creativity and drive he had in the previous releases, he ups the stakes in the delivery and execution departments. The Breeze, the Breakup Song, and the MC will be the first songs we threw on the aux, but The Friends and Strangers, The Soup, and The War are also excellent songs to circle back to. He even has a song on here with Kevin Durant before he left for Golden State. That's like our version of the Michael Jackson-Shaq team up during the Jam music video. Now, before we move on to our next selection, just gotta point out how difficult it is to make these lists as objective as possible. In terms of quality and creativity, More About Nothing is peak mixtape Wale, but it's not our favorite tape in his catalog. That distinction has to go to Summer on Sunset. That cover goes crazy, the LA vibes are surprisingly West Coast, and his song selection is impeccable. But we are professionals here, and the theorist must come first. Number 8, Nipsey Hussle, Crenshaw. If we asked you to name the difference between a rapper and an artist in the comments, could you do it? If you ask us, it comes down to presentation. How do you perform in front of a crowd? Are you focused on visuals as well? Do you take creative leaps on every project? Nipsey as an artist is so underrated that people rarely talk about him seamlessly blending his business acumen into his music. After reading Contagious by Jonah Berger, Hussle was convinced that in order to distinguish his music from the crowd, he needed to make a moment last forever. How'd he do it? By releasing a free mixtape that would go platinum on that piff. Of course, there's more to the story. In conjunction with the free streaming version of the tape, Nip had a limited edition rollout, selling 1,000 hard copies of Crenshaw for $100 a pop, and it sold out. This move would spark a fruitful relationship with Hove, and the two eventually collabing on the posthumous What It Feels Like, in addition to putting Nip's Neighborhood at the cornerstone of commercial investment and cultural prominence in perpetuity. At 21 tracks, including a 12-minute outro, the project is a bit bloated loaded, but when you get classics like All Get Right, Check Me Out, and 4 in the Morning, it's hard to single out tracks that should have missed the final cut. Nipsey's Proud to Pay model would go on to inspire independent artists like Chance the Rapper, Frank Ocean, and Russ, with his intellect and aspirations ultimately making him a one-of-one talent and leader. Since we're talking mixtapes, be sure to check out Mailbox Money and Slauson Boy 2. Feel free to rank those down below. Number 7, Joey Badass, 1999. We have very conflicting emotions about this mixtape, so forgive us for stating the obvious. Not only is Joey's debut spectacular, he dropped the project while most of his peers were coming off their junior year in high school. Despite his extraordinary potential and exceptional effort out the gate, we've never been able to shake this feeling of force-fed nostalgia. Before we even had time to process the highs and lows of his tape, Joey was already drawing comparisons to the other teen prodigy out of the Big Apple. Except this time, instead of feeling like we stumbled upon something we'd never heard before, we got a body of work that felt a little too familiar. It's normal to reminisce about the good old days, even if New Yorkers seem to perpetually stroll down memory lane. But Joey got his hands on some reimagined boom bap beats, dialed up his best Brooklyn MC impression, and East Coast aficionados ate it up. Okay, calm down, we're only half serious. You'd never catch us equating Dilla, MF Doom, and Chuck Strangers to recycle boom bap. The point still stands, innovation and experimentation were the last things on Joey's mind back in 2012. Their ages and lyrical approaches might have been similar, but with their debut sitting on the opposite end of the impact spectrum, we're gonna put the comparisons on the back burner. Joey can still top a 30 under 30 list, so the story is far from finished. Even with our mixed reactions to the tape and Joey's current legacy, 1999's inclusion on this list was never in question. Influence aside, your man went ballistic on tracks like Waves, Daily Routine, and Righteous Minds. You can't even discuss 2010's lyricism without mentioning Survival Tactics. The most underrated aspect of this project has to be Joey's willingness to put the pro-era team on, yet still produce career highlights in his solo moments. Maybe we spoke too soon about those comparisons. No, not Nas. Badass in a lot of ways was shaping up to sound like the second coming of Tupac. He's got one foot in the studio and one foot on the movie lot. His demeanor is rebellious and he's always 10 toes down for his guys. We don't need to remind y'all about the Outlaws features, do we? Number 6, Future, 56 Nights. Fans of DS2s know the meaning or familiar with Esco's Abu Dhabi prison stint. For those unfamiliar, let's just say the story behind this project's creation not only makes this Future's most miraculous mixtape, it also makes it his most impactful. Being Hendrix's 15th mixtape, 56 Nights highlights the Atlanta MC's insane work ethic while disproving any narratives of overnight success. Then again, if you thought his come up wasn't organic, you couldn't have been outside during his run from Monster to Purple Rain. We might not have gotten the 400 songs that were on Esco's hard drives at the time of his arrest, but we did get March Madness, and that's a trade-off we'll take 10 times out of 9. Completed right before Future's set at South by Southwest in 2015, the tape would be met with universal acclaim and an extended aux shelf life. While it does have the 808 Mafia executive production tag, Southside is the man behind the boards on 75% of the project. His trademark 808s come blaring through on bangers like Diamonds from Africa, Never Gonna Lose, and Trap Ends. The latter would be the only holdover to make it to DS2, granted it was a deluxe edition cut. Yo, let us know down in the comments, out of his iconic mixtape trilogy, which tape is your favorite? Number 5, Chance the Rapper, Acid Rap. Chano has cultivated a very whimsical reputation for himself. He can't go anywhere without the I love my wife jokes following. Doubters and believers alike are waiting to see if his newest project can serve as a bounce back from the big day, and who can forget those random ass Kit Kat commercials.
Break me off a piece of that Kit Kat bar.
The album cover might invoke thoughts of stargazing. The title might even sound fun if you've seen one of 100+ stoner movies that catapulted actors like Cheech and Chong, Seth Rogen, or James Franco. But being the role model that he is, Chance lets it be known, don't try this shit at home. Pusha Man Paranoia sees the rapper bearing his soul on his sleeve. He's not just in a dark place, he's battling depression, addiction, and isolation. We can't speak on the hallucinogenic side, but if the tape is an indicator, them trips might be equal parts highs and lows. Songs like Juice, Everybody's Something, and Favorite Song see the Chi-Town native euphorically practicing self-love, humility, and spiritual growth all in one. We had seen Kanye, Common, and John Legend breathe an air of excitement into the city in the mid-2000s. Fast forward nearly a decade later, acts like Chief Keef, Chance and Dirk felt like the second coming on steroids. In a lot of respects, Chance had been positioned to lead his peers into the promised land. Impact, quality, influence, all roads can be traced back to his 2013 breakthrough. Factor in features from Childish Gambino, BJ the Chicago Kid, Saba, and Vic Mensa, it's not surprising to see the heights he would surpass in the next 3 years. 2014 freshman selection, global hitmaker, the first not-for-profit Grammy, and perhaps the most impressive feat of all, working with the hometown hero, Mr. West himself. That's a pretty stacked resume for the guy with the 3 on his hat. Number 4, Big Crit, Return of Forever. King remembered in time. If it's one thing the Mississippi MC will be remembered for, it's a legendary mixtape catalog that deserves its own honorable mention. While Crit, born Justin Scott, has 4 mixtapes that could have landed him on this ranking, we feel Return of Forever offers the most comprehensive look at what the 2011 freshman does best. In addition to robust lyrical performances on tracks like Time Machine, Dreamin', and American Rap Star, we get reflective Crit on Free My Soul and The Vent, and Subwoofer Crit on Country Shit and Highs and Lows. No puns intended, our 4th theme song is by far the heaviest in our rotation. If you're streaming it on DSPs, you've got about 7 songs short, including the aforementioned R4 theme song, Time Machine, The Vent, and Country Shit. We know sample clearances can pose their own challenges, but if you have to gut the project's best material, that feels a little counterproductive. When looking at artists whose mixtape runs went beyond prolific, you get a very short list of names. We get either original material from the likes of 50 Cent or Wiz Khalifa, or re-envisioned works from the likes of Lil Wayne or Wale. If you're really lucky, you'll get the output of a Wale with the quality of a 50 Cent. We call this overlap free album territory. Crit's legacy will always be centered around Forever Is a Mighty Long Time, but make no mistake, he cut his teeth on these free albums. The same projects that position him firmly on the Mount Rushmore of mixtapes. Honorable mentions. Many fans of the Motor City MC would argue Shandon has never been better than on his 2012 offering. We would counter that while his tape is unforgettable, the competition it faces is just as impressive. It's worth a spin just to check out the star power he enlisted though. Spittle, we don't want no smoke. With over 3 dozen mixtapes to his name, there was a 0% chance we could cover a XXL mixtape list and not mention Andretti. While his mixtape catalog might even be more impressive than his car collection, we would argue every other entry on this list has earned its spot through impact, quality selection, enduring replay value, or a combination of all 3. I know, this omission hurt us the most. While the influence is undeniable, Wiz suffered from an issue that many of his peers at the time also couldn't escape: horribly aging production. Hey, don't blame us, we didn't tell him to put Demi Lovato on here. It's still Taylor Gang or Die though. Don't sleep on that Cabin Fever either. Number 3, Meek Mill, Dream Chasers 2. File security has been a top priority in the industry since the advent of the internet. At the peak of their careers, artists like Eminem, 50 Cent, and Lil Wayne have all had to move their release dates up early or outright had to rework albums to combat leaks. Meek might have them beat though. Anticipation for Dream Chasers 2 was so high that the mixtape was leaked a month before its scheduled release. Even with the 30-day head start to spin the project, fans would bring so much traffic to that piff that the site would crash upon its official release. When looking over the list of features, unforgettable song selection, and monumental word-of-mouth campaign, the tape has a stronger case than most to be called the greatest mixtape of all time. To our Gen X and Millennial family, we're sure we don't need to remind you of 50's iconic run in the late 90s and early 2000s. Gen Z can attest to Lil Wayne's dominance from the mid-2000s to the early 2010s. But numbers don't lie, and the numbers tell us Dream Chasers 2 sits in a league of its own as the most streamed mixtape of all time. Meek teams up with Kendrick, pre-Good Kid, Trav before the auto-tune or his own freshman selection, even tapping rising stars like Drake and Big Sean. Now, we're not fans of recycling material. If you put a banger on a project that doesn't go anywhere, you just gotta hold that L. A-Man and Burn would be repackaged for his debut Dreams and Nightmares though, and honestly, we understood. The tape spans an impressive 20 tracks, taps 14 different features, and includes production from more than a dozen producers. With all those moving pieces, the only miscue we could come across was French Montana jumping on Racked Up Shouty. Whatever lens encompasses your definition of success, DC2 is probably lapping it. You don't have anything left to prove when your mixtape is gracing Album of the Year lists. Number 2, Mac Miller, Faces. 24 songs, 14 producers, 1 magnum opus. Mac did the unthinkable when he rolled out an experimental cloud jazz rap project. We've talked about artistic growth and development before, but the Pittsburgh native was painting with colors we didn't even know were on the easel. In an unusual leveraging of privilege and popularity, Mac's XXL status drove him underground, where he would develop one of the most well-fed fan bases the game has ever seen. We would get modest Mac on I Love You, Thank You, experimental Mac on Magadelic. He would release work under aliases, Larry Lovestein and Delusional Thomas, giving us a jazz EP and a horrorcore mixtape respectively. He was also flexing his producer chops under the name Larry Fisherman, resulting in a mixtape with Vince Staples titled Stolen Youth. All of this artistic freedom and creative control would culminate in 2014's Phases. The project has starfire and is dripping with production value, but its most redeeming quality has to be its authenticity. The mixtape would broaden Mac's horizons, laying the groundwork for the vulnerability, introspection, and fluidity that his catalog is now remembered for. Yes, the project's runtime could be mistaken for Netflix's newest #1 movie, but there isn't a skip in sight. The project starts off strong and never really loses steam, but the run he went on from Therapy to Diablo? Chef's kiss. They finally added the mixtape to streaming services back in October 2021. Despite not being known for his commercial feats, the project would debut at #3 behind nearly 70,000 units sold. Its 32,000 vinyl sales would set a record for a hip-hop R&B album dating back to 1991 when sales were first tracked. Rest in paradise to a legend. #1, J. Cole, Friday Night Lights. The man, the myth, the middle child himself. Whether in a barbershop, on a podcast, or around the table at your local kickback, certain conversations will always come up in the discussion. Who's responsible for JFK's death? Did outside factors escalate the East Coast-West Coast beef? Does J. Cole have a classic under his belt? We can't really speculate on the first two, but we can definitely shine light on the latter. We find it funny that Jermaine has always come under scrutiny for his material and quote-unquote boring delivery, yet people rarely talk about how the label didn't see the vision behind Friday Night Lights, originally intended to be his debut record, forcing him to re-record and release the current version of Sideline Story that we have today. That's right, aside from In the Morning featuring Drake, none of the project's 20 tracks would enjoy a mainstream release, despite eventually ascending to legendary status amongst one of the most devoted fan bases in rap history. Essentially, Cole has one of the hardest I Told You So projects of all time. With producer credits on 70% of the mixtape, not only would Fayetteville star Pupil have established himself as a two-way threat, he would have done what neither of the other big three accomplished, debuting with an instant classic. If you want to do a deep dive into the samples and interpolations throughout the project, we would highly suggest taking a minute to sift through those liner notes. For our fans on the go who just want classics to add to the playlist, we got you. Vilmatic, Enchanted, and Too Deep for the Intro are personal favorites. But then there's joints like Love Me Not, The Autograph, and Sea World, which also sowed seeds of artistry he would later reap on records like Forest Hills Drive, KOD, in the offseason. Yo, they got some saying about those who can do and those who can't teach, or something like that. And we like Shia LaBeouf saying it better.
Make your dreams come true! Just do it!
Yep, that's another one in the bag. We've covered a lot on this channel, but mixtape still hasn't really gotten their due. If you want to see more mixtape rankings, let us know down below. If you washed your face today, be sure to give this video a like. And while you're at it, might as well keep the love going with that infamous super thanks button. It's your boy CJ for CT signing out.